What's going on, guys? I'm Dr. Caleb with Incline Performance Therapy. Today we're going to be going over our baseball specific warm-up. Brady's going to demonstrate the exercises here and we're going to get at it. All right, the first movement we're going to perform is actually a hip 90-90 exercise. So I'm going to have Brady get on the ground here. And what we want to do is we want to get the hips at a 90-degree angle and the knees at a 90-degree angle. So he's got a great 90-degree angle at his left hip and then a 90-degree angle at his left knee. And then on the right side, he's also got this 90-degree angle. And he's going to rotate back and forth. That way we're really working on that internal and external rotation of the hips and really loosening up the low back at the same time. And we'll want to do about 12 of these on each side before moving on to the next exercise. All right, for this exercise, this warm-up, we're going to be doing a crab reach. So I'm going to have Brady pull his feet a little bit closer to him right here, and his hands are going to be underneath him, and he's going to raise his hips up like a crab position, and then I'm going to have him reach over his shoulder to the opposite side, and we get a really good lat stretch and oblique mobilization with this warm-up. We're going to go back and forth. Great job. And the key here is to raise the hips up as high as possible because that maximizes the stretch on the lats and those obliques. There's one more here. The next movement, we're going to do a side kneeling trunk twist. So I'm going to have Brady bring his left knee down on the ground and extend that right side. We want to plant that right foot real solid, and we want to have that right knee as straight as possible. And from here, he's going to rotate with his trunk and bring his arm up as far back as he can. He's got pretty good spinal rotation here. And we're going to repeat that motion for about 12 reps on each side. This is a really good groin stretch, a really good hip mobilization, and a thoracic spine loosener. All right, for this movement, we're doing a tall plank alternating toe tap. All right, so he's going to get in a push-up position. A tall plank means a push-up position. Hips down a little bit lower here. And then he's going to take his right hand and move to the left foot. And he's got pretty good mobility here as well. And then we're going to alternate and have his left hand go to his right foot. And then we're going to go back and forth for this motion, doing 12 reps on each side. This movement's pretty challenging. We call it a bear position trunk rotation. So Brady's going to get in a bear position as if you were going to do a bear crawl. His knees are right under his hips, his hands are right under his shoulders, and then he's going to rotate his hand as far as possible, rotating that spine. He keeps his eyes and nose on that moving hand, and then he's going to rotate the other way. Now I'll get out of the way. Now a key thing here is that he's not moving his knees side to side. It's really easy. Why don't you show them what it looks like if you twist your hips? So you see how his knees rotate and his hips open up. That eliminates a lot of the challenge of this exercise. So we want to make sure that his knees stay solid throughout the motion. That's really good. And that way we maximize the rotation on the spine. Here we're going to do a movement called finger flicks, and we're going to take our 4 digits that are not our thumb, and we're going to put them behind the thumb and extend as fast as possible, putting as much pressure as you can on your thumb. And basically you'll push out and you want to go as many reps in as quickly a time as possible, just like that. And after a little while, this will actually get pretty tiring on your forearm. For this movement, we're going to try and loosen up the wrists a little bit. We're going to do something called rev the engine. So I'm going to want Brady to have a 90-degree angle at his elbows. And he's going to pull back, and I actually want him to go down as well. It's not a perfect rev the engine, but that's what we're going with here. We're basically trying to get as much flexion and extension in that wrist as possible. All right, for this movement, we're calling it flip the burgers. Basically, you're going to have your hands down, and we're going to rotate back and forth, turning the hands up and turning them down. We want the elbows bent to 90 degrees, and we're going to do this in a pretty quick motion, just to get the elbows and those supinators and pronators warmed up before we get moving. All right, we're going to call this next movement directing the plane, right? So I'm going to have Brady bend his elbows to 90 degrees, then I'm going to have him pull his wrist back and forth, just like if you think about the grounds crew member directing the plane. At the airport, this is kind of what we're doing right here, just moving his wrist back and forth. For this next movement, we're calling it a finger splay with an elbow rotation. And so what this looks like is you splay your fingers as much as possible, and then you're rotating your elbows around. We're trying to get some good motion in the elbows and to warm up the fingers and forearm at the same time. We want to do this in both directions. And this one's actually a little more difficult than it might look. Sometimes it takes a little bit of practice, but it's super good to warm up the forearms and the elbows before you throw. All right, so we're calling this motion a rotational monkey swing, and I actually got this from a swimming workout that I saw. So what I'm going to have Brady here do is he's going to rotate and move his arms up overhead and then alternate sides. This is super good to warm up the spine with some rotation, get the shoulders moving overhead, and get a lot of good blood flow going through those areas. This is a really good movement. All right, this movement is just a single leg hop. The little key important thing here is when you're doing the single leg hop, just don't let that heel go all the way to the ground. We're trying to warm up the calf and ankle and toes a little bit, and keeping the heel off the ground just activates the muscles in the bottom of the foot and calf a little bit more. All right, this next movement is called an ice skater. It's actually one of my favorite movements for baseball players because it really challenges your balance, your coordination, and it works on power production as well. So Brady here is going to start on one side, and he's going to jump to the opposite side and land on one leg before jumping back and forth to the opposite side. Like I said, it takes a lot of coordination, a lot of balance, and you got to work on power production. You want to jump as far as you can to the side as possible. All right, Brady here is going to do an A skip, which is basically a mini skip with his feet while he's pumping his arms in a running motion. The little skip is great to get the ankle and calf moving, and then raising the knee up that high is super critical for the hip flexor mobility and activation before we play. All right, the next movement we're going to do is called a B skip. And basically what we want to think about here is kicking open a door that's in front of us and then pulling our foot down as fast as possible. So we're really looking to stretch out the hamstrings and then get the glutes activated a little bit here. So Brady's going to kick open that door that's in front of him, and then he pulls that foot down and you get the hamstrings and glutes moving. All right, this movement here is called open the gates. Basically, we're going to start in a closed position and then lift our knee in front of us and open up the hip and then step through and perform again on the opposite side. So Brady here is lifting that hip. He takes a little shuffle step. You want as wide a rotation as possible on that hip to really make sure we're getting all the muscles of the hip warmed up before we play. Now we're going to do a movement called close the gate. And basically we're going to start with our hip open this time and bring the knee forward so that we're closing that gate in front of us. Again, we want as wide of a hip swing as possible to really loosen up all the muscles at the hip, to get the hip labrum loosened up, all those ligaments ready to go before we get moving. All right, so karaoke is a super familiar warm-up for a lot of athletes. With this one, we want to make sure that back leg, the first step, it moves in front of the lead leg, and then on the next step, it moves behind that lead leg. And on this one, we want to make sure that back leg, the knee comes up as high as possible. That way we're loosening up the hips as we move. Okay, so right here, let's bring that front foot forward and back, get that knee up, move through. Yeah, that's good. Okay, and then we'll come back. All right, for the side shuffles, we're basically gonna move straight to the side laterally. We don't want our feet to cross over for this motion. We're gonna have our arms go up overhead, so we're getting a little bit of shoulder motion at the same time. And I want that back foot to stay put just for a little while as you start the motion. That way we get a groin stretch on the back side, just loosen things up. Okay, so go ahead, Brady. Stride out a little bit. You want a wide foot base. Don't let those feet cross over. Moving as far as possible. Arms overhead. That's it. All right, here we're going to do a sprinting motion. But for the first 10 steps, Brady here is going to make those steps as quickly as possible. So you're going to take, it's going to be like a chopping motion, and then he's going to extend his stride out for the rest of the sprint. All right, for this sprint, we're going to do a long strider sprint. Basically, the steps here are going to be longer than what feels normally comfortable. So the idea here is to explode off that backside, take as long a stride as possible each time you take a step. So Brady, get on that start line, and then we're going to stride out as far as possible with each step. All right, and for this part of the warm-up, we're basically just going to do a full speed sprint. There's nothing fancy here. Whatever your normal running mechanics are, you're just going to go all out. This is to make sure you're ready to go before you start. Okay, so Brady, we're just going to do a full speed sprint. Get on the starting line. And take off. All right, for this movement, we're doing a banded single leg RDL row. Okay, so that's a lot going on here. I'm going to have Brady back up a little bit, get some tension on the band. And he's going to perform a single leg RDL right here, and then when he comes back up, he's going to perform a row with the side that's holding the band, okay? And he's going to go back and forth through this movement. It's very difficult to balance through this exercise, and ideally, we don't want to have our foot touch the floor each rep. That's pretty good, and that's how he was able to move there a couple of reps. This is a really challenging exercise, but it's super good to warm up the posterior chain in the hips and the shoulder. All right, for this movement, we're going to do reverse flies and then regular chest flies with the bands. So we're going to start to step away from the band, get a little tension. You want to keep your elbows pretty straight. They don't have to be perfectly straight. The primary thing with this movement is to pinch the shoulder blades on the backside as you're performing the reverse fly. And then we're going to flip around. I'm going to do a forward chest fly. Again, we want to keep the elbows pretty straight. Let the band stretch the shoulders, open up the chest a little bit. That way we get a good stretch of the chest, we get a good stretch of the front of the shoulder, and we're also activating those muscles at the same time. For this movement, we're going to do diagonal pull-aparts. The first motion is going to be facing the bands, and so we're pulling the bands away from the attachment point, of course. We're going to pinch the shoulder blades on the back side, but we're going to angle our arm up and then alternate down, back and forth on each side. And then, after this, we'll flip around and we'll face away from the band. And he's going to pull his hands together on the front side. So we're basically warming up both sides of the shoulder with this movement here in an alternating pattern. That's really good just to warm up the shoulders before you get going. Here we're going to do a movement called the snow angels. All right, we're going to do these forward and backwards. All right, for the first one, see how Brady pulls it with his palms facing forward, and he pulls the band back, pinching with the shoulder blades a little bit, and then he's going to go up overhead, keeping his elbows pretty straight, as if he was performing a snow angel. Right, he's laying on the ground making a snow angel. Then you're going to turn around here. And for the forward snow angel, he's going to do the same thing. His palms are facing the same way. The band's just in the opposite direction. And this is going to pull a little bit more on the front of the shoulders in this direction. This is super good movement to get the serratus anterior, all the shoulder blade stabilizers loose and moving before we throw. For this movement, we're doing a shoulder raised internal rotation, and then we'll do an external rotation movement after this. So I'm going to have Brady move into his stride position. Brady's the lefty, so his right foot's going to be moving forward. Notice how he keeps his elbows at his shoulder height. This is really important for this motion. That's basically where we want to be when we're throwing the baseball. And then he's rotating forward, not bringing the elbows forward at all. This is a really good position. All right, then I'm going to have you turn around and face the band. We're still going to have his lead leg forward. Keep those elbows high. Yep, perfect. And then he's going to rotate back, just swiveling the shoulders as he pulls the band back behind his head as far as he can. This is a really good movement to warm up both the front and the back of the shoulder. And for this movement with the band, we're basically just going to work through a throw-in motion. So again, Brady's lefty here, so he's going to have his right leg forward. That's his lead leg. He gets in his stride, a good stride position. You might have to take off a little tension on the backside of this motion. That way you can make the follow through go all the way. But he's basically going through that throwing motion, a little resistance to the throwing arm. You get the obliques going, you get the legs going. This is super good for warming up. All right, so that's our baseball specific warm-up that we use for our baseball players at Incline Performance Therapy. Brady, thank you so much for helping us out today. That was awesome. If you guys have any questions or if you need any answers or need help with anything baseball related, performance side or rehab wise, let us know. You can reach out to us on social media or you can follow our page if you want more content like this. Thanks, guys.